You know, when you have a show about gratitude, you've got to be grateful for your sponsors. And in that life of gratitude, you know, we all have guides. Somebody that guided us through our lives, that made us appreciate those things that we have. And that's why I'm so delighted and so grateful for our sponsor, Life Guides. Life Guides is a peer-to-peer community that helps people navigate through their day-to-day stressors by providing a place of empathy, listening, wisdom, and support with a guide who has walked in your shoes, experiencing the same challenge or life experience as you. A true life guide. And because you're listening to our gratitude podcast, if you go to their website, lifeguides.com/schedule a demo and add the code HEALTHY2021. The code is HEALTHY2021 in the free text box. You'll get 2 months of their services for free. 2 months for free. So sign up, show your team you care, get a life guide. Be grateful for those guides in your life, as I am grateful for our sponsor, Life Guides.
Hey, welcome to Reading with Gratitude Live. I'm your host, Gostick Elton, the Apostle, coming to you from the Gratitude Epicenter of the Universe, Summit, New Jersey. We're going to be broadcasting live on LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube, all brought to you by the wonderful people at the Methods Network. You know, we always say, give us 30 minutes. We'll give you great information, great inspiration, and your own personal roadmap to a life of gratitude at work and at home. Well, I'm excited to introduce our guest for today, Craig Lemasters, my new friend Craig. Craig is actually the former CEO of Assurance Solutions that he led through 3 major crises: Hurricane Andrew, 9/11, and the financial crisis of 2008. While there, he doubled the company's revenue during his 11-year tenure. He is now the CEO of GXG. He's had 250 plus discovery conversations with senior leaders, and Craig's specialty is getting people unstuck. Wisdom that is especially important right now. I'm excited to introduce to you my new friend, Craig Lemasters. Craig, welcome to Leading with Gratitude Live.
Hey, thank you, Chester. What a privilege it is to be with you today.
Yeah, we're going to have some fun. Hey, and listen, for those of you that are listening, you're going to have questions for Craig. Put it in the chat box, and then we'll take your questions as we go. Just, to kind of kick things off, Craig, tell us about, why did you decide to leave this great job as a CEO in a tremendously successful company to do this second career, your career 2.0? What made you do that?
Yeah, I mean, it's a fair question because it's not a traditional career path for most people. And I tell people this all the time, Chester, that I literally had the best big company job anybody can have, and had the good fortune of being at Assurance Solutions for 27 years, actually, and got to be a part of us going through some really cool stuff. But I reached a point where I was really passionate about and felt very privileged that I'd bumped into a couple of really methodologies and things that helped me when I was particularly, as I like to say, stuck. And I just got to a point where I thought it'd be really neat to go share these, particularly this wisdom-based learning methodology I talk a lot about, and it'd be kind of fun to go see if I could recreate that in a format that would help other leaders that get stuck on hard stuff. And so I did that at the ripe old age of 55 a few years ago. Left public company life, and I've had the privilege. Again, I tell people that I got the best big company job. Now I have the best little company job. So I'm very fortunate.
That's awesome. So talk to me about this idea of getting stuck. You've interviewed 250 plus executives. So what are some of the symptoms that you see with leaders, whether they're big teams, big organizations, little organizations, where you know that they're stuck? What are the symptoms?
Yeah. And the reason I use that, first of all, I just like sort of simple terminology. I'm not a consultant by background. So I tend to use pretty simple words, and that's how I felt. Again, I sat in particularly the CEO chair for 11 years, or as I would call it, 44 quarters. And I got stuck on some really hard stuff. And all I mean by this is what I found, and again, this is really my story that I've been able to share with hundreds of people, and this seems to resonate, but what I found was that when I was faced with new things, trying to reinvent the company, trying to go to a new geography, and I call that new stuff, just some kind of new stuff, it was really hard. And that was the first symptom of stuck for me. Was it happened more often when it was pretty far from our core. But even just a little bit from our core, I found we got stuck. And so the biggest symptom is we just didn't move very fast. I ended up creating this little visual that I started telling the story, and I put it into a visual, but I call it the circle of stuck, where it's a series of meetings and emails and follow-up and more meetings. And again, I've shared this with, over 100 CEOs the last couple of years, and it tends to resonate because that was me. And I think we do that because we really don't know how to get out of that stuck place and that circle. And we just kind of spin around and around. And that's when I found that, again, I bumped into this wisdom-based learning, and it was a game changer for me. But that's how I think about it. There's also some cool buzzwords I love to talk about. Symptoms of stuck, there's lots, you throw in buzzwords and we start using that as our vocabulary. That's another symptom of stuck. But it is that circle we get in.
Okay, so I think we've all felt like we're stuck, right? We get paralyzed. I love that you described your career, by the way, 44 quarters, because when you're a public company, every quarter, right, is critical. So now we're stuck. So with this, how do we get unstuck? Like, what's the first thing you need to do?
Yeah, so what we tried to do is refine a process that, again, I sort of bumped into and was a little bit of the guinea pig at Assurance Solutions and testing. But the methodology I recommend is first of all, is first and foremost, and none of this works unless we have the humility to admit that we're stuck. It's super important that we recognize it, and that we recognize that getting some outside wisdom, which is my preference, would help. Second thing we do is spend a fair amount of time of really defining the destination. I call it simply A to B. Again, I like simple terms. And that might sound obvious to most people, but I was shocked at when I got stuck at Assurance Solutions. A lot of it was we had just never really clarified where we want to go. You hear the term all the time, digital transformation. We were doing that. Well, what does that actually mean? And what does it mean to my organization? So defining that destination, and I've seen that repeated over and over the last 3 years. We have a general idea, but we push pretty hard to really define the destination. And then the third piece is we like to build this and think of it, if you think of an ecosystem, a learning ecosystem, is actually build ecosystem bubbles, or what are the component parts of how you have to get to the destination, right? The devil's in the detail. And those bubbles are actually the wisdom we typically need to go find. And the reason we know that is, and that I knew it at Assurant, was we do a simple exercise where just take the wisdom we have in the organization and ask yourself an important question. What's the probability that I can go do extremely well what's in that bubble with the wisdom I have in the company today? And again, I define wisdom as this unique intersection of both knowledge and experience. So we have humility, we define the destination, and then we go find the wisdom. And there's tons of ways we can share how you go find the wisdom. But most importantly, once that wisdom has been transferred into you and your team, then we have to activate it. Let's go activate the learning. And I'm obsessed with the number 3. Let's pick 3 things that we can go do to activate this wisdom. And I promise you, we've been able to replicate this with lots of companies. I knew it worked for me, and now I've seen it work for a lot of folks, a lot of leaders get unstuck very quickly with those simple 3 or 4 steps.
I'm a big fan of the rule of 3 too. I think you can remember 3 things, right? ABC, 1, 2,
right.
3, baby, you and me. I mean, it's a song, right? So talk to me. I love this wisdom based. How do you make it safe for people in your organization to share that wisdom? I mean, aren't there some people that are afraid sometimes to step up with ideas and suggestions?
Yeah, that's right. And I think, so what we're doing is we're finding 3 or 4 what I would call operators like me. I'm just an operator, ran stuff my whole life. And what we've been able to find is just a huge network of people, operators, that are willing to help. And so it's really that wisdom that we're transferring into other organizations. right? So if I think about digital transformation, everybody talks a lot about that. If there's 3 or 4 pieces of digital that, let's say data is an obvious one, that you really don't have wisdom in the company, again, knowledge and experience in the company, well, we have tons of people in our network that are operators that do that every day. And so all we do is bring them into the conversation, and in a small setting, we facilitate that transfer of wisdom. Again, people can do this on their own. You don't need us to do it. But the reason I talk about this a lot is it works. Right? Because I have a simple formula for all this, Chester. I mean, our job is to flawlessly execute, which is pretty unrealistic, right? I mean, that's what we're supposed to do as leaders. And I would argue particularly when we're trying to do new stuff, the reason we don't is we lack the confidence to flawlessly execute and move forward at the right speed. The lack of confidence, what I found through this whole process the last 12 years, is that we don't have the wisdom on that topic. So we just don't have, we're good people, but we don't have the knowledge and experience on a particular topic. So all I want to do is bring that wisdom into the room, help transfer it. And we trademarked rapid cycle learning because I think it's the fastest way we learn. And it's how we were supposed to learn. We were supposed to learn hard stuff from wise people. And so that's really what we do.
That's awesome. I had a friend who said, by myself, I think I'm pretty smart. When I get everybody in the company thinking about it, we can be Einstein. You got that collective wisdom. Yeah. So, we got a really international audience today. We got people from Long Beach, California, Zanesville, Ohio, Mexico, Peru, South Africa, Oakland, California. And here's our first question from Saudi Arabia. Abdul asks, is there a time frame for moving? Like when you get stuck, is there a certain time frame that you need? How do you answer that question?
Yeah, my time frame is super simple, and that is the sooner the better. And the reason I drew this circle of stuck picture is to start to help leaders self-diagnose. And I'll tell you a quick anecdote that's super easy is I would always tell a story about I knew it was an issue for me in my organization when we were having lots of meetings, and then all of a sudden the CC and the BCC list started growing. And I had a CEO a few months ago interrupt me and says, I have a record for you. I just saw an email with 347 CCs on it. And I'm like, if that's not a symptom of stuck and it's time to do something different, then I don't know any. And so for me, it's super simple. The earlier, the better. And the diagnostic tool is honest assessment. How far outside of your core business are you trying to leap? If it's your core business, you might have some speed bumps, but you shouldn't get really stuck because that's what we're good at. It's when we take that leap out of the core. And so I would recommend the minute you take the leap out of your core, build that ecosystem. What do we really need to be wise in? Both knowledge and experience, and just do an honest assessment. I call it a probability game. What's the probability we can do that? And I've been doing these probability games for several years now, and most organizations score less than 60% when we get them to be super candid about the wisdom to go do this new stuff. That's pretty shocking.
That is. It's interesting. Now, everybody's involved in a crisis, right? A pandemic means everybody, yeah. Right? And so we've got Onur from Turkey said, now's the time to see new horizons and have awareness for new opportunities. So is there a little different formula when you're in a crisis? Do things need to speed up? Is it different getting unstuck in a crisis?
I don't think it's different, Chester. I think this wisdom-based methodology is actually more important. And and you mentioned in the intro, I don't know if it's good fortune because it was great learning or bad fortune, but having lived through Hurricane Andrew in Miami that devastated our company where we were originally headquartered. 9/11 is a good example. I mean, the financial crisis of 2008, and I tended to focus on 3 things. One was on the people side, is really dig deep with people and just understand individually how people are dealing with this. And I think most people I talked to the last 3 months are doing that. And then second, on productivity, is to be very specific with people on their goals and productivity based on where they are with the crisis. Everyone is very unique and different. And the third thing, which gets unstuck, is around communication. And the advice that I've given, which worked for me in those 3 previous crises, it works in COVID, is go communicate as much as you possibly can, then take a big, deep breath and double it. And that's how we should be communicating. And so I would actually argue that wisdom-based methodology coming out of COVID now, and as we look at the future and the new stuff we have to go do, is incredibly important. And I don't know if you've seen, there's a lot of recent data on this. McKinsey just published a really interesting study, and I think it was 71% of leaders said they don't believe they personally have the expertise to grow post-COVID. And to me, there's no better data to support. Well, we better be really good at finding that outside knowledge and experience to get us growing again.
So talk to me a little bit more about communication. I'm a big fan of exactly what you said. Like when you think you're over communicating, it's probably about right? I love it. You said, take a deep breath and then double it. How important is it in organizations to communicate in different ways? You know, it just seems like there's so much information overloaded. Companies now have, you know, they've got Slack channels, they've got email, they've got newsletters, they've got video chats. How important is it to look at different methods, and how are you coaching your CEOs around effective communication? Like, it's easy to say, let's communicate. Yeah. In your view, what is effective communication?
Yeah, and for me, effective is really, really simple, Chester. It is in normal times. It's especially important when we're in crisis mode. And we use a process I had the good fortune of, again, a wise person teaching me many years ago, called message squaring. And the reason I love it is its simplicity. You put the message in the middle, and the reason it's called a message square, it's actually a square. And the reason it's a square is you only get 4 pieces of supporting data or proof points for the message you're communicating. And so we love to share that with clients, and I particularly like to do it with CEOs. It worked great for me because it makes you lazy. It sounds really easy, but even getting that message down to 1 sentence and then 4 supporting factors, because what we want to do is we all love to talk, and we end up making the message really not even comprehensible because we just go on so much, and it confuses people and it makes them nervous. So 1 message, 4 supporting points, use the message square. It's I promise you, it's awesome and sounds easy, but it's not.
Exactly. So you've put all this great stuff in a book that you just finished called Unstuck. It comes out this summer. So the message square is going to be in there. Tell us about what else is going to be in the book for leaders that are really looking forward to becoming unstuck over the summer.
Yeah, so the book is a little bit of my story, which, you know, is not that interesting other than I got stuck a lot. So it's a little bit of my story and how I landed on this wisdom-based learning methodology. And quite frankly, I described the whole process. You know, I want our firm, this GXG thing that I started to do well, but what I want more importantly is for leaders to understand how to use wisdom, how to activate wisdom, how to find it. So it's very descriptive on sort of the highlights we talked about today, but how to know you're stuck, how to identify B, how to build the learning ecosystem, how to go find wisdom, and then how to synthesize this wisdom into these 3 actionable items. I mean, that really is the book. So it's kind of a tell-all book. I mean, it's really how we do it. And I've said it over and over. I mean, whether we can help people do it, it doesn't really matter to me. I really want leaders to take a hard look at this, because I can promise you that one thing, it worked for me, and I've had the good fortune now of using this across 12, I think, industries and 100+ stuck topics. And we've just seen amazing results, and people want to share their wisdom. If you ask them in the right way, people love to help, and the spirit of reciprocity is very, very real. You just have to be intentional about finding it.
You know, I love that piece of advice. Just ask. You know, people want their voices to be heard. Got a couple of more questions for you. From the UAE, Faranzana says, and I love this, you know, boil it down. What's the one thing that leaders must do right now? Like, what's that one thing?
Yeah, I think for me, the one thing is what we covered. I hear more with the clients and the CEOs that I've gotten to talk to the last 90 days during COVID is around the communication piece that we already touched on, is people are confused about the future, and confused in the sense of how are we going to grow out of this? I think everybody that I've seen anyway has done an amazing job of being safe, taking care of people, learning how to do work from home, been flexible with people. Unfortunately, there's been already a lot of furloughs and layoffs, but I think in general, we've done a good job. What I hear the most is I don't understand how we're going to build out of this in the future. So if I had to just pick one, there's a couple of, 1As and Bs, but that would be mine, is build the message square and memorize it and get your senior leaders to memorize it. So we're all saying the same thing. Here is our hypothesis of how we build out of this, and then go passionately tell the story. Now, people need to hear that right now.
Excellent. I love this question from April in Texas. She says, what was the best piece of advice you were ever given as a CEO?
Yeah, I've got a bunch of them, so I won't violate my rules here. But one of them is, and I actually use this exercise. I'm glad she asked the question. I use this exercise when we speak to groups live, which is just write down, one or two things that you learned and where did you learn it, and it kind of proves the wisdom-based learning, because it's usually, and nothing. I mean, I love academics and things, but it's usually from a very wise person. So one of my go-to things, because if you look at what most leaders say in hindsight in their career, what they would do differently, it was I would make people changes faster, knew it was the right thing and I couldn't quite do it. And I had a super wise person, the second generation of my company that I grew up in, Assurant, Kirk Landon, taught me at a very young age. He asked me one day, he came in my office abruptly and he said, Lemasters, he called everybody by their last name, old school, said, Lemasters, is there anybody on your team that you wish would resign today? I'm like, wow, what does that mean? What was he talking about, me? And he just disappeared. And he did that 2 or 3 more times, and then finally explained the punchline is that's how we should think about these hard people decisions. And as I've used that over the years with myself and every day and in the company growing up and even to this day, and shared it with other people, everyone kind of chuckles because we all kind of think that way. But why don't we use that as a filter? Because the reality is when we make the people changes, it's usually best for them as well as us. And we usually have 1 or 2 people in there say, yeah, it'd be easier because I really like them. They're really good people. And maybe they've even done a good job, but we know it's not a right fit. So I would just say that's probably one of the wisest things that I was taught at a pretty young age is that question. Do you wish anybody would resign today?
I love that question. Who do you wish would resign? Who do you wish, would retire? Hey, quick question. Does Unstuck, does your formula work for personal lives as well? Have you applied it there as well?
I think it does. I'm a big fan just in general now of wisdom-based learning. When my wife and I are blessed to have four kids, and I look at like how much we'd like to think we've impacted their lives. But the reality is some of the biggest impact have been from other people, other really wise people, knowledgeable and experienced people that have really moved the needle from really a parenting standpoint from my perspective. I think relationships in general, there is tons of wisdom right around us. Again, when we get stuck, and this is part of my passion in this work, Chester, it feels super hopeless, quite frankly. And I can see it on CEO's face because I had the look, I call it. And it's the same in our personal lives. When we get stuck, it can feel super hopeless. And guess what? There are others that have gone before us and found a path through their own knowledge and experience to get unstuck. So yeah, I mean, it's a long answer, but I'm pretty passionate that it works across the spectrum, personal and professionally.
Excellent. So, we love to give 3 simple tools. You're a fan of 3. I'm a fan of the rule of 3. What 3 tips would you do as we kind of wrap up here to help people get unstuck? What's number 1, 2, and 3?
Yeah. Number 1, humility. got to have it. And a part of humility, again, you have to be humble enough to really define the destination. Number 2, go find the wisdom. Lots of ways to do it, but be intentional. And number 3, activate it. When I say activate, no more than 3 things. It's super hard, sounds easy, but pick the 3 and go do it based on that wisdom that you just acquired.
Excellent. So give us a website. Where can people go to find more about you and your amazing work?
Yeah, well, I appreciate that. Yeah, CraigLemasters.com. We've got all the stuff out there, and including details of the book that you were kind enough to mention coming out soon. So you can find me at CraigLemasters.com.
Excellent. Do you have a pub date? When should we expect to see that available on Amazon?
Yes, so it should be out in October. We delayed it a little bit, of course, with all the COVID stuff. So right now we're targeting October.
Excellent. So I love it. Humility, find the wisdom, activate your learning. CraigLemasters.com. His book is going to be Unstuck, available in October. As you know, we ask all our guests this not so tough question. Where did you find your gratitude?
Yeah, well, today it changed, Chester. Today, my gratitude is in my health. I've been blessed with good health my whole life. Had a back injury 4 weeks ago that changed my whole perspective about nerve pain, back injuries. So I'm super grateful today for my health.
And when you get better, do you think you'll be able to beat your daughter in tennis? Is that even on the horizon, or has she got your number?
There is no amount of unstuck wisdom that can help me do that. It's just not going to happen. That's a simple no.
That's great. Well, listen, Craig, it's been a delight to have you on the show. Thanks for sharing your wisdom. Looking forward to your book coming out. Please tap us and let us know so we can amplify that message. I think just so many people right now are feeling stuck. You know, you're stuck at home. You're stuck in your career. You're stuck. You're paralyzed by all the changes. And so I really appreciate you coming on the show. Craig Lemasters, CraigLemasters.com. His book is Unstuck. I hope you'll figure it out, and I hope you'll buy it. Thanks, Craig. Okay, so here we go. I want to call out and our sponsor, which is our book publisher, our wonderful book publisher. We've got a little commercial from our sponsor. If you'll bring it up, there we go. Leadingwithgratitudebook.com is our website. Alan Mullally said, I love, love, love this book. And don't forget to buy me, buy me, buy me. Hey, we had a lot of questions come up at the end. We're going to get in there, Craig and I, and we'll answer as many as we can. I just want to give a shout out to the greatest online producer of all time, Brent Klein. Will you wave to everybody, Brent? Love that. You know, our next show, I'm so excited on Thursday, 1 o'clock Eastern, to introduce to you Dr. Terry Jackson. Terry is the author of Transformational Thinking, the first step towards individual and organizational greatness. He has also contributed to articles in Forbes, Chief Executive Magazine. He's authored more than 150 articles on LinkedIn. We'll be discussing some of the most important issues of our time on culture and race relationships. Do not miss it. And by the way, if you're looking for some really cool production like you're seeing here, don't hesitate to get a hold of our friends at the Methods Network or our past episodes at methodsof.com on our network. Hope to see you every Tuesday and Thursday, 1 o'clock Eastern, same bad time, same bad channel. You give us 30 minutes, we'll give you great information, great inspiration, and your own personal roadmap to a life of gratitude at work and at home. Well, listen, I'm grateful for our time. I hope through this whole COVID, through all these crises, that you'll be more grateful, you'll be a little more kind, and you'll be a little more patient. I'm grateful for our time together. Take care, everybody. Cheers.